Leo lovers, welcome back to my channel. This is Georgie here of Aztec Leopards, and today we are going to continue our series on Leopard Gecko Morphs. In particular, I'm going to be diving in today into Recessive Morphs, and the first one I've decided to introduce to you would be one near and dear to my heart, where a lot of my projects go around this morph, and that is the Eclipse.
By the way, I got a ferret.
Because this is where things get interesting. Because if you've ever wondered why one leopard gecko costs, like 20 bucks versus one that's like a $300 gecko, chances are it's because of some recessive genes that animal carries. Now, this isn't an exact rule, but generally, supply and demand, if it's harder to find a certain genetic makeup of an animal and it's harder to produce, it's going to be more expensive than one that's easily produced. And that being said, an animal that has a lot of recessive genes packed into one animal, that is a very difficult thing to produce and to replicate. So especially if you find a male with a bunch of recessive genes, that thing is going to be super expensive. And doing it correctly and not line breeding and getting kind of like unhealthy animals is also difficult. So it has to be like the stars aligned to get this animal that's perfectly healthy with a ton of recessive genes that's hard to find. That's why it's gonna cost so much. Yeah, let's dive into recessive genes. I'm excited. Where did the Eclipse come from? Tracking down an exact origin date and a name for whoever found the Eclipse gene was kind of difficult for me to find. So if you happen to know who bred the first Eclipse and when, please let me know down below. I did find a date on a breeder's website, not particularly a breeder that I really trust or like, so I'm kind of taking that info with a grain of salt. I'm not sure how legit it is, but from what I found, the first Eclipse hatched out of a random normal pairing in 2004. Again, I don't have a name or an exact date, I just 2004, random mutation. Nah. What the Eclipse gene does is actually put pigment in the leopard gecko's eye. Now, the pigment can be shown in a couple different ways, which we're going to talk about. So there are other genes that affect leopard gecko's eye pigment, and as a common rule of thumb, you do not cross any of these because it's going to be impossible to differentiate one from another. So same thing like crossing different lines of snows, crossing different albinos, it's a big no-no. It's not creative, you're not the first one to think of it, it's a rule for a reason. You're just gonna make a lot of people upset if you tried to cross any of those, so just don't do it. It's not a good idea, okay? So the solid eye eclipses is kind of the creme de la creme, in my opinion. But there is variation within the Eclipse gene. You can get what's called a snake eye, which basically means half of the eye is pigmented. That's normally what people call a snake eye, but a snake eye is technically defined between 1 and 99% of the eye is covered in pigment. They're only considered solid eyes when their eye is completely either one solid black color or solid red. That would be considered a solid eye eclipse. Anything less is considered a snake-eyed eclipse. A lot of people that will sell eclipses will sometimes put a percentage for each eye. Like I said, it's harder to get some that would have two solid eyes, and it's just striking when you do hit that. But everyone has their own preference. Some people really like snake eyes best, which is not a problem, but I just think if I'm going for an eclipse, I want the best eclipse and I want two solid eyeballs. So this is the first one I'm going to show you. Her name is Spitfire, and she's named Spitfire for a reason. She sometimes will lunge out of her tub at me for food. It's not to be mean, she's just hungry. and she's got a feisty attitude about it. Anyway, she is a just an Eclipse. She does have some hets, but we won't get into that. So as you can see, she's got these beautiful, beautiful solid eyes on both sides. So my ideal Eclipse. There is one last kind of form of the Eclipse gene, and this one is still kind of fuzzy for me to identify to some extent. I believe I have one in my collection, which I'm going to show you later, but there is a version of the Eclipse gene called Abyssinian, and that just means they're also called clear-eyed eclipses, which would help you out a little bit too. Basically, it's an eclipse, but if you look at their eyes, they look like normal eyes. So how do you distinguish a normal leopard gecko versus a clear-eyed eclipse or an Abyssinian gecko? And that is, a lot of that is determined by secondary characteristics, which we're about to go over. Some secondary characteristics of eclipses are, and I found this on Gecko Boa, which is a very highly reputable leopard gecko breeder. If you've not heard of them before, I highly advise going to check them out. They also have their own page and an info on each of the individual morphs, and they're a very credible source. So I completely trust them and their info that they share on the different morphs of leopard geckos. But anyways, going into secondary characteristics, one characteristic is high white markings. Now, this is where it gets a little controversial because I'm a big fan of pied things, and going off of what Gecko Boa says, pied is not even like technically a thing. It's actually just a secondary characteristic to the Eclipse gene, which hurts my feelings because I have faith that the pied is its own thing, but so far it's proving not to be. But anyway, maybe that's why I like to work with eclipses so much, is because I enjoyed those pied markings, and I'm going off on a tangent. Anywho, rant done about pied. I'll save that for another video. Some white markings include like little socks on their legs and feet, and white tail tip, white nose tip, high white on the physical sides of the animal. Also speckling and faded coloration. That's why I think the Eclipse goes really nicely with the white and yellow, because the white and yellow has that softening effect to pattern, and Eclipses also have that effect, and together they just really mesh really well. And also, another thing that, this is new to me, which I found on Gecko Boa's website, was the patty stripe aspect that's linked to the Eclipses. There's not a real science behind it. It just randomly will pop up with Eclipses, sometimes even with hets. This is something that I had not noticed before, but now being called to my attention makes sense, looking back on all my other Eclipses. Especially in my raptors, I like to have the traditional patty stripe raptors. That's just me. I think they should. A true raptor is a red-eyed patternless trimp or orange, and if it's got body pattern, it's not for me. Man, I'm just like full of opinion today, ranting about my raptors and my pied projects. Anyway, let's see some geckos, shall we? Okay, this is one of my 2017 Holdback Raptor females. She has a good representation of the snake eyes, if she'll cooperate with me. She was not happy about the lighting, so I lowered the lights on the windows a little bit. So, of course, she's gonna close her eyeballs now. But yeah, now, since she's a albino, she's not gonna have black eyes, she's gonna have red eyes. And I wish she would open them for you. But unfortunately, albinos also have sensitive eyes to light, so she's keeping them shut. So we're gonna have to find another. Oh, there we go. Did y'all see it for a second? Whoop, there we go. Snow snow goes really nicely with the Eclipse gene. So here is a Mac Snow Eclipse, and she has got 2 solid black eyes. And she has a really nice little pied marking on her nose. Also, see her legs and her little white socks? Yes, Eclipse. I'm going to show you Hera, one of my 2017 holdback females that has very much a Abyssinian look to her eyes. Oh, there's an eye. And it's gone. Next, now that you've seen kind of all 3 variations within the Eclipse gene, I'm going to show you how the recessive side of things works. So basically, a recessive gene, you have to have homozygous, recessive, or little e. So that makes it harder, whereas with a dominant gene, you only need one of the alleles to get that animal's phenotype expressed. So you have a higher chance of making what you want with a dominant gene. Recessives are harder to get, and that's why they're more valuable. It has to be 100% homozygous recessive in order to display the trait. So breeding, the best way to 100% hit your odds for this is to have 2 animals that already display the gene that you're wanting to replicate. So then you have 100% homozygous little e or recessive, and that means 100% Eclipse. So you breed an Eclipse to Eclipse, you'll get 100% Eclipse. You breed an Eclipse to a Het Eclipse, which means this animal up here, that's Het Eclipse. Het means heterozygous. Heterozygous is opposite of homozygous, so you're going to have 2 different alleles. Homozygous, 2 of the same alleles, either being dominant or recessive, it doesn't matter. Homozygous, 2 of the same. Heterozygous, 2 different alleles. So, breeding an Eclipse animal to a Het or heterozygous Eclipse animal, I'm going to show you how that unfolds on the Punnett square here. So you'll get 50% of your babies will be visual eclipses because they will have the homozygous or same alleles, and it's recessive. And then the other half will get heterozygous, so one big E and the little e, which means this one's going to be expressed. So unfortunately, your eclipse is not going to be expressed. So 50% of your babies will be normal, but Het for eclipse. I just realized how tiny I'm writing. Here, I'll try to make it better. So if you breed 2 that are Het eclipses, and again, remember how I said that the more recessive genes an animal has, the more expensive it's going to be. So if you have limited amount of gecko buying money, you can still get those recessive traded animals that you want. It's just going to take you a little bit longer to breed them and get them, get what you want versus paying a bunch of money to get one already pre-made, I guess you could say, in a way. I hate to say animals pre-made, that doesn't sound right. But yeah, so if you don't have a lot of cash to throw towards animals and you want that recessive animal, you can get it. It just is going to take a little bit of time. So dropping down our big E's. So this is 2 heterozygous animals. Dropping down our big E to our big E to our little, and our little E's. So this is where it gets even more slim, because you're gonna have 25% is this genotype, which is homozygous dominant. So you're still gonna have normals, but they're not gonna be het for Eclipse, unfortunately. 50% of your babies will be heterozygous for Eclipse, so they'll be normals, het Eclipse. And then 25% will actually be Eclipses. So that's where leopard gecko breeding gets fun, is when you have a small chance of hitting the odds and you do. This is every egg that hatches, you have to roll the dice again for these combinations. Little thing I'm gonna have to teach y'all with not just Eclipses, but recessive genes. Some of y'all might see an ad for a gecko that says, you know, like normal, that is 50% het Eclipse, or normal, that is 66% het Eclipse. Now, how can it only be half heterozygous Eclipse? What does that mean? So this is 75% of your outcome, right? Since your other 25% are Eclipses, 75% of your outcomes are normal and possibly het Eclipse. So basically you add 25 and 50 together, you get 75% of your animals, and then of that 75%, 50 are gonna be het for Eclipse. So we do a little, when in doubt, do a proportion. So 50 times 100 divided by 75 is actually 66. So of this population, 66% of the babies, you have a 66% chance when getting a normal from this combo to get the one that actually is het for Eclipse. And if you're confused by that, rewind it, watch it again, because I didn't get this the first time either. I was like, wait, what? So take this out of the equation. 50% and 25%, our normal population is now our 100%. So what percentage of that is het Eclipse? So that's what I did here. So your 50 goes here. Those are the het, that's what we're interested in. You add these two together, you get 75. Now if we put that in 100 percentile, basically what we did here, it comes down to 66%. So when you're selling someone this animal, you're basically saying there's a high chance it's het Eclipse, but I can't guarantee it, which is the best thing to do as a good reputable breeder. You don't want to just say, it most likely is het Eclipse, so I'm going to label it het Eclipse, because if they breed that animal to an Eclipse and they don't get Eclipses, then uh-oh, you're in trouble. You just sold false information. If they're nice, they might tell you about it and just let you be aware of it. Other people that are not so nice will get mad at you, and you just don't want to build that kind of reputation. You always want to be honest about what your animals are and what genes you have in them. This normal 50% het Eclipse, how would someone go about formulating that up? So basically, if we have an animal that we know for a fact is not het Eclipse, but we're trying to make hets, or maybe it's a result of breeding two animals, you're trying for a different goal, but they also have a lingering het in there. So we're gonna say a pure homozygous normal, no Eclipse in there or whatever, versus one that's heterozygous. So they're both gonna appear normal, but one carries the gene for Eclipse. So transferring over. You're gonna get 50% with the genetic makeup of the big ones, which is normal and non-het. And then your other 50% are gonna be like this. which are also gonna be normal, but Het Eclipse. And again, same thing like this up here. Just looking at these two animals, there's no way you're gonna be able to visually tell if it's Het Eclipse or not. So you have a 50-50 chance of the animal being Het Eclipse, which is where you get 50% Pos Het Eclipse, or some people will just simply say 50% Het Eclipse. And there are so many recessive genes out there. So imagine when you start combining multiple recessive genes in one animal and crossing it with others. Hopefully I'm opening your eyes to all the different possibilities to leopard geckos. There is so much you can do with them, and that's why I picked this animal to breed, because the way their genes work really captivated me. I love the rules. I love playing with it. I'm very passionate about it. I love it. I have something cute. This is Piper, the Pied Piper. She is my Pied Raptor from Art Geckos. And I love her so much. And she's got two solid, gorgeous ruby red eyes that she's not gonna show us, because why would she? It's so bright out here. And it's so rude to have her in this bright light. It's just so rude. You know, quit pulling. I want to see your eyes. Anyways, I had to share her. Look at that beautiful white nose. I could have bred her this past season, but I wanted to make sure she had a little more size on her. She's very long, but not very fat yet. I think she would have a hard time with egg laying if I just tried to let her lay in her body condition that she's at now. So 2019 will be the year, girlfriend. I'm also I've bred a male specifically for her, so I have to grow him up, and they will be paired and be some killer raptors, my friends. This is Kazam. He is my total eclipse or super snow eclipse breeding male. He is a son of Vegas Geckos Alizar. He's quite a handsome boy. Good representation of white head and tail tip and legs. So to conclude this episode, I hope y'all enjoyed with the eclipses. If you have any questions for me, or really anything, you can message me, comment down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All that good stuff. I'm trying to build this channel. I have a feeling it could be something great. I just need help getting it moving. So if you could share whatever you need to do, I would really appreciate it. And like I said, if you have any questions or concerns, or even if you want me to help you try to identify your leopard gecko, I don't mind with that stuff. I know some breeders will like get really pissed off about people sending them pictures and asking to identify it and da-da-da. But some people are just generally curious what their animal looks like, and I get that. So if you're curious and you want to figure that out, don't hesitate to send me a message or a picture or whatever. But yeah, what do you think about that? Keep on giving me yawn. Oh. So next weekend I am going to be shopping around at Herps Conroe, which is next weekend, September 8th and 9th, I believe. You can buy tickets online at Herps website. You can also buy them at the door, but it's probably better to buy them online because they are doing some promotions where the first 100 through the door on Saturday and the first 50 through the door on Sunday will get chances to win prizes, including cash, which I'm really hoping I could win some some cash so I can buy some more animals. I am on the hunt for a white-sided Brooks king snake and also possibly my first crested gecko. It just depends on what's available and what's around. I may end up with both, I may only end up with one, I may not end up with anything. So those are my plans for next weekend, so make sure to stay tuned for my Herps Conroe video. And I'll also be upgrading my Abronia cage here pretty soon, so I'd like to do a care video on that. So like I said, stay tuned, keep watching, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll be bringing some more info to you. Bye, Leo lovers. Bye. This is Pip.